Yarden Grant slammed the car door shut and squinted up at the sprawling beach house before him, its pale wood siding glowing in the late afternoon sun. He hadn't planned on coming back to California, not after everything that happened 5 years ago, but when his assistant practically begged him to take a break. He booked the rental and let himself breathe for the first time in months. He was a millionaire, sure. But lately, all the money in the world hadn't fixed the restlessness clawing at his chest. The house was perfect, private, modern, right on the sand. No photographers, no board meetings, no investors hounding him, just waves, quiet, and solitude. Exactly what he needed until she showed up. "Hey. You're blocking my driveway." Yarden turned, startled by the voice. A woman stood barefoot in cut-off jeans and a tank top, a surfboard under one arm, glaring at his black Escalade. Her hair was a wild mess of curls, sun-kissed and tangled from the ocean. Freckles dotted her nose. She was stunning in the kind of way that didn't require effort, not the runway polished type he was used to in New York, but real, sharp, alive. "My bad," he said, stepping around the vehicle. "Let me move it." She raised a brow. "You renting next door?" "Yeah." "Just got in." "Figures," she muttered under her breath. "Another one." "Another what?" he asked, curious. She gave him a look that could cut glass. "Another vacation millionaire thinking he's found paradise, only to throw loud parties and trash the beach." Yarden leaned against the car, arms crossed. "So I'm being judged already?" "No," she said. "I'm just observant." He grinned, and this time she looked slightly amused. "I'm Dalia Everhart. I live here, full-time, so if you're planning to turn this place into a frat house, let me know now so I can call the cops in advance." "Yarden," he said, offering a hand, "and I don't party, I don't even like people." She hesitated. "Well, that's a start." He watched her disappear into the beach house next door, slamming the screen door behind her. For someone so tiny, she had a whole lot of attitude. He liked that. Later that night, after unpacking, Yarden walked barefoot down the sand, letting the salty wind clear his head. The stars were out in full, the moon glowing over the ocean. He hadn't felt this peaceful in a long time. Then he saw her again. Dalia stood by a fire pit in her backyard, poking at the flames with a stick. Her dog, a giant golden retriever, lounged beside her. "You always set things on fire when you're mad," he called out. She looked up. "You always sneak around at night." "I'm not sneaking," he said. "I was walking, thinking, trying not to ruin the beach with my rich guy shoes." A smile tugged at her lips before she caught herself. "Tashay, mind if I join?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure, but no weird rich people talk. I don't care about yachts or stocks or whatever." He walked over and dropped down on the sand beside her. "Deal." They sat in silence for a while, watching the flames dance. "So," she said eventually, "what brings you to this beach town in the middle of nowhere?" "My assistant forced me to take a vacation. Said I was acting like a jerk." "Were you? Probably." She laughed, a soft, warm sound that made something tighten in his chest. "You always listen to your assistant, only when she threatens to quit. She's terrifying." Dalia leaned back on her elbows. "Well, you picked a good spot. It's quiet here, simple." "Is that why you live here?" She nodded slowly. "After my dad passed, I couldn't stand the noise of LA anymore. So I moved in to take care of the house. Figured I'd surf, teach some art classes, avoid traffic." Yarden looked over at her. The firelight played across her face. "You seem happy," she shrugged. "Most days." They talked until the fire burned low and the night grew cold. Yarden had never talked this much with a stranger, especially not a woman. But Dalia wasn't just anyone. She challenged him. She didn't care about his money or his last name. She didn't even ask what he did for a living. And that was exactly why he couldn't stop thinking about her. Over the next few days, they kept running into each other. At the beach, at the local coffee shop, at the market where she insisted the strawberries tasted like actual sunshine. Each time, the conversations got longer, the walls between them thinner. "So you really don't own a yacht?" she teased one morning as they walked along the sand. "No yacht," he said. "Just a couple of classic cars and a very overpriced espresso machine." She grinned. Wow, you're practically low maintenance, he nudged her shoulder. And you? You ever gonna admit you like me? Don't push your luck, city boy. But her eyes said otherwise. On the fifth night, he invited her over for dinner. The private chef he'd hired earlier that week prepared grilled lobster, truffle pasta, and a decadent chocolate soufflé. Yarden made sure everything was perfect: candles, soft music, fresh flowers. He wasn't trying to impress her. He just wanted her to know she was worth it. When she arrived, barefoot and in a navy sundress, her mouth dropped open. You did all this. I had help, he admitted. But yeah. Wanted to thank you for not calling the cops on me. She stepped inside slowly, taking it all in. This doesn't feel like a thank you dinner, this feels like a date. It is, he said simply. If you want it to be. Dalia looked at him, really looked at him. You're not what I expected. I could say the same thing about you. Dinner passed in a blur of laughter, teasing, and glances that lingered too long. After dessert, they stood on the balcony, watching the waves crash below. I don't know what this is, she said quietly, but it feels real. And that scares the hell out of me, he turned to her. It scares me too. She looked up at him, then leaned in. Their kiss was slow, hesitant at first, but quickly deepened into something electric, something that felt like the start of everything. When they pulled apart, Dalia rested her forehead against his chest. You're not leaving in a week, are you? No, he said, wrapping his arms around her. I think I just found the one reason to stay. Yarden adjusted the collar of his linen shirt as he stepped onto Dalia's back porch, clutching the clay bowl he'd carefully carried over. Don't drop it, he muttered under his breath, balancing the weight of it as he knocked once. Dalia opened the door with a paintbrush in her hand and a streak of teal acrylic across her forehead. Her expression shifted from surprise to curiosity as she blinked at the bowl. Is that a plant? More like a peace offering, Yarden answered, holding out the small succulent in its hand-painted pot. I saw it at the nursery this morning, thought it looked like something you'd forget to water but somehow still keep alive. Dalia took it slowly, examining the pot. You painted this? I tried. The guy at the store said it adds emotional value. I think I added more fingerprints than skill. She laughed and stepped aside, gesturing for him to come in. A breeze drifted through the open windows, carrying the scent of salt and something citrusy. Canvases leaned against the walls, half-finished, streaked with bold colors. Dalia nudged a pile of books off a chair with her foot. Sit, if you don't mind the mess. I was working on a commission. Should I be honored you took a break? Depends. Are you going to judge my playlist? He raised an eyebrow as a scratchy vinyl rendition of an old soul ballad played from the corner. Only if you say you actually paid for that record player. I inherited it, and it's moody, like me. Yarden looked around, taking in the organized chaos. You're more layered than I thought. Most people don't look long enough to notice. I'm not most people. She paused, then turned back to her canvas, dabbing at a corner. You're not what I expected either. Yarden crossed the room and studied the painting behind her. It was abstract, fiery brushstrokes tangled with darker hues. What's this one about? Grief, but it's trying to make peace with itself. His gaze lingered on the canvas, then her. You ever finish them? Eventually. But sometimes they need time to sit in silence. He nodded, understanding more than he let on. Let me take you somewhere, he said suddenly. Dalia turned, eyebrows raised. Where? Not far, just trust me. She hesitated, then set down her brush. Give me 10 minutes. They drove down the coast in his convertible, the wind tangling her hair as the sky shifted into shades of lavender and coral. Yarden pulled off at a secluded overlook, the ocean roaring below them. Dalia stepped out, barefoot again, walking to the edge with her arms crossed against the wind. This is where I come when I need to think, he said, joining her. No one knows about it, not even my assistant. She glanced at him sideways. Is this your version of vulnerability? Maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to see what it looked like with you standing here. Her breath hitched slightly, but she didn't respond. Instead, she sat on the hood of the car and drew her knees up, watching the water churn below. My mom used to say the ocean remembers everything, she said after a while. Secrets, promises, even lies. It just keeps turning them over until they're smooth. Do you believe that? I don't know. But maybe that's why I come here too, to let it take what I can't carry. Yarden leaned back on his palms, letting the silence settle between them. It wasn't empty. It was full of things unspoken. "You're not here just for vacation," she said suddenly. He didn't answer right away. "No," he admitted, "I'm not." She looked at him, searching for something in his face. "So what is it?" he exhaled. "I sold a company last year, thought it would feel like success. It didn't. I tried starting another one. It felt hollow. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat without thinking about what the hell I was doing, so I walked away, came here, to figure it out. To remember who I am before the spreadsheets and the boardrooms." Dalia nodded slowly. "And have you?" "I'm starting to." She tilted her head. "Because of me. Because of this. You, the quiet. The way you look at the world like it's still worth painting even when it's ugly." For a moment, she looked like she might cry, but instead she reached out and took his hand. "I used to think people like you didn't feel things like that. People like me. Men with too much money and not enough time." He smiled faintly. "That was me. Not anymore." The wind tangled around them as the sun dipped below the horizon. Neither of them moved. Later that night, back at his place, she wandered through the rooms with quiet awe. She stopped at the wall of glass that looked out onto the beach. "This house is beautiful," she said softly. "I didn't build it," he said, "but I chose it." "Why this one?" he shrugged. It felt unfinished. Like it needed someone to make it feel alive. She turned to him. "And you thought that someone was you?" "No, I think it was waiting for you." Dalia didn't speak, but her eyes brimmed with something new, not fear, not resistance, but longing. She stepped closer, resting her palm against his chest. "I'm not good at this," she said. "Neither am I. But I want to try." He kissed her again, slower this time, like they had all the time in the world, like the ocean below could wait, and for once maybe it could. The first time Yarden saw Dalia teach, it was by accident. He'd wandered into the local community center looking for a quiet corner to take a business call, one he hadn't wanted to answer but couldn't ignore. The space reeked of sun-warmed paint and clay, and the hum of voices carried through the open door of Studio B. He paused when he heard her laugh, not the soft one she gave when she was amused, but the full, unfiltered sound that made something settle in his chest. Inside, Dalia moved between students' kids mostly, ranging from 7 to 12, offering tips as they molded figures from terracotta. Her hair was piled on top of her head in a messy knot, and her jeans were streaked with blue glaze. She crouched beside a little girl trying to shape a dolphin, her hands guiding the child's without taking over. "You don't have to make it perfect," she said gently. "It just has to feel like yours." Yarden stood in the doorway, forgotten phone call buzzing in his hand. "You just gonna stand there like a wax sculpture, or are you gonna help clean brushes?" came a voice from behind him. He turned to find a wiry, older woman with a steel gray braid and a suspicious squint. "Sorry," he said, pocketing the phone. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You know her?" the woman asked, nodding toward Dalia. Yeah, you could say that. She never brings people around here. Not since that guy she dated 2 years ago dipped halfway through her mural project. Broke her heart and left her with a wall full of half-finished koi fish." Yarden's eyes narrowed. "She doesn't talk about that." "She wouldn't," the woman said. "But I do. Because you look like you've got the kind of shoes that don't get dirty." He glanced down at his Italian loafers and sighed. "I get dirty," he said. "Just not usually with clay." "Good," she said, thrusting a bundle of rags at him. "Then you won't mind helping me scrub these. I'm Ruth." "Yarden, don't make her regret letting you in." He didn't. That night, Dalia invited him to stay for dinner again, but this time in her space barefoot, floor cushions, mismatched dishes. She made grilled fish wrapped in banana leaves and mango rice, the kind of meal that tasted like a memory. They ate on the floor while the dog snored nearby. "You didn't tell me you taught kids," Yarden said between bites. "You didn't ask." "I didn't know to." Dalia reached for a pitcher of tamarind tea. "It's not a big deal. I teach a few mornings a week during the summer. It keeps me grounded. You're extraordinary with them." They remind me to stop trying to control everything. Yarden leaned back on his elbows. So who was the koi fish guy? She didn't answer for a long time. Then setting down her fork, she said, someone who thought I was a holding pattern until something better came along. He was wrong, he was young, and I was stupid. You're not stupid, she met his eyes. I was with him because I thought I needed someone to tell me who I was. Turns out I just needed to be still long enough to listen to myself. He nodded, then reached for her hand. What do you hear now? That I like the way you listen. After dinner, they lit candles and sat outside on her porch, wrapped in an old quilt. The wind had picked up and thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. Tell me something you've never told anyone, Dalia said, watching the sky. Yarden didn't hesitate. I had a scholarship to a music conservatory in Italy when I was 18, flute, classical. She turned toward him, stunned. You play the flute, used to. It was the first thing I ever loved, but my father said it wasn't practical, said he wouldn't support me if I chose it. So you chose business, I chose survival, and then I got good at it, maybe too good. I haven't touched the flute in over a decade. That's heartbreaking, he shrugged. Money got loud. Music got quiet. I'd give anything to hear you play. I don't even know if I still can. Yes, you do. The next morning, he drove into town before sunrise, found the only music shop still open that early, and purchased a silver-plated flute that gleamed like memory. He brought it back to the beach house, stood by the open balcony and played. The first note was shaky. The second, steadier. By the third, he was breathing again. Dalia showed up 20 minutes later, eyes wide. You really did it. He lowered the flute. I figured it was time to stop running from the things that made me. She stepped closer, touched the keys. It suits you. You suit me. She looked at him like she was seeing everything she hadn't dared to believe, but the moment cracked when her phone buzzed on the table. She checked it, then frowned. What is it? He asked. My brother, he's in trouble again. Left town a few months ago, promised he'd stay clean this time, but now he's back and asking for money. Do you want to help him? I don't know. I've done it before. It always ends the same. I love him, but I don't trust him. Yarden touched her shoulder. You don't have to decide right now. I do, though. He knows where I live. He always finds me. Then let me help. She shook her head. This isn't your problem. You are. She froze. I mean it, he said. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore. Not while I'm here. Dalia looked away, blinking fast. I don't know how to let someone in without expecting them to leave. Then let me stay long enough to prove I won't. Outside, the clouds broke open. Rain beat against the glass like a drum. Inside, neither of them moved. The storm had come. But neither of them was running anymore. The knock at Dalia's door came just after dawn. She opened it barefoot, still in the oversized t-shirt she slept in, and found Yarden standing there with his hair damp from the ocean, sand along the cuffs of his rolled pants, and a look on his face she hadn't seen before, a quiet intensity, like he'd made up his mind about something and there was no undoing it. I need to show you something, he said. I haven't even brushed my teeth. I don't care. She hesitated a beat, then grabbed her keys and followed him outside without another word. The air was still cool, the early light pale and silver. He led her down the beach, past the bluff where the tide bit at the rocks, until they reached a small boathouse tucked behind a dune. The wooden structure had faded with time, half swallowed by ivy. A heavy padlock hung from the door. I found it 2 weeks ago, he said. Started coming here every morning before I saw you. I didn't know why then. And now I do. He unlocked the door and stepped aside so she could enter first. Inside, the space had been cleared and swept clean. A pair of easels stood by the open window, catching the slanting light. There was a wooden workbench lined with brushes, fresh canvases, and a row of sealed jars filled with vibrant pigments. On the far side, a leather case lay open, his flute resting like a promise inside. Dalia turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. You did this. I thought maybe you'd want a place that was only yours, he said. No students, no distractions, just space to create, and maybe I'd play while you painted. She stared at him, blinking slowly. You made me a studio. I didn't make it, I found it. But I filled it for you. Her voice was quiet. Why? Because I'm falling in love with you. She looked away, her fingers curling at her sides. I know it's fast, he continued. I know we didn't mean for this to happen, but I've never been more certain about anything. You came into my life like a wave I didn't see coming, and now the shore doesn't look the same without you. When she finally looked back at him, her eyes were wet. You scare me. I know. I don't want to need someone again. You don't have to. But you can let someone choose you. She walked toward him, slow and sure, until she was close enough to touch the hem of his shirt. I never wanted a life that looked like anyone else's. Me neither. I don't care about money, you know that. I know, but I care about you, his breath caught. And I don't want you to leave when the month runs out. I'm not going anywhere. They stood in the middle of the studio as the sun climbed higher, lighting up the dust motes in the air like flecks of gold. Then, without hesitation, she kissed him again, this time with no fear, no caution. Just truth. Later that day, Yarden returned to his beach house and made a call. When his assistant answered, he didn't wait. Sell the apartment in New York, he said, and cancel everything for the next 6 months. I'm staying here. There was a pause, then a long sigh. Finally, he smiled. Also, I need you to find me a commercial space near the coast, something big enough for a private studio and maybe a small gallery. You're opening a gallery, not me. Dalia. That night, he invited Dalia to a dinner he'd planned for the two of them on the rooftop of a historic inn overlooking the water. There were no guests, no music, no waitstaff, just a linen-covered table, candles in antique holders, and a private chef who greeted them with a warm smile before disappearing to the kitchen. Dalia wore a loose ivory wrap dress, her curls pinned back with 2 delicate seashell clips. Yarden had on a navy button-down and slacks, his sleeves rolled to the elbows. As they ate, the conversation drifted deeper than it ever had. She told him about the first time she sold a painting, how she'd cried alone in her car afterward, not because she was sad, but because it had felt like letting go of a piece of herself. He told her about the company he built from his college dorm room, the one that had made him his first million, and how it never once felt like home. When dessert arrived, a lemon tart with a sugared crust, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath hitched. Yarden, it's not what you think, he said, opening it to reveal a delicate silver ring set with a single oval moonstone. This isn't a proposal, not yet. It's a promise. She looked at the ring, then at him. A promise that I'm not going to disappear when things get hard. That I'll fight for this, for you, for us. She reached for it with trembling fingers. It's beautiful. It's not a diamond. I didn't want it to be like everyone else's. She slipped it on. It fit perfectly. I don't want anything that looks like everyone else's, she whispered. The wind picked up, tossing her curls loose from the clips. He reached forward to tuck one behind her ear. I want to build a life with you, he said. Not a perfect one, just a real one, full of art and music and days where we fight over sandwich fillings. She laughed through her tears. You hate olives, and you put them in everything. We'll figure it out. They stood on the rooftop as the stars came out, their fingers intertwined, the sound of the ocean below like a heartbeat that belonged to both of them. Weeks later, the gallery opened in a converted warehouse near the marina. Locals came in droves to see the first exhibition, Dalia's solo show, every piece painted in the secret studio Yarden had given her. The final piece, displayed at the far end of the room, was titled Found. It was abstract, vivid, and unmistakably full of joy. Yarden stood beside her during the opening, his hand in hers as a young girl stared up at the painting in awe. Are you the artist? She asked Dalia. I am. And is he your husband? She asked, pointing to Yarden. Dalia glanced at him. Not yet. He leaned down beside the girl, but someday. Dalia's brother didn't come that night. He'd called a few days earlier to say he was checking into a program in Arizona, and she believed him for the first time in a long time. She'd sent him a postcard with no return address, but a photo of the beach and a note that simply said, I'm okay. and she was. That night, as the gallery lights dimmed and the last guests trickled out, Yarden locked the doors and pulled her into his arms in the middle of the room. "Remember that day you said you didn't know what this was?" he asked. "I remember. I do now." "It's everything." She looked up at him, her moonstone ring catching the light. "You rented a beach house," she said, "and found something you weren't even looking for." He kissed her then, slow and certain. "I found you." The morning of the official gallery ribbon cutting, sunlight poured through the high windows in golden slants, illuminating canvas edges and brush strokes with reverent warmth. Dalia stood barefoot in the center of the gallery space, turning slowly, her eyes tracing each painting, each shadow, each detail only she could see. The air was filled with the scent of jasmine and clean wood, and her heart beat with the rhythm of something that felt like peace, but more certain. Yarden stepped in from the side entrance, carrying 2 paper cups of horchata from the food truck that had pulled up outside. He held one out to her without a word, then leaned against the wall beside her, looking out across the room. "The mayor's on her way," he said casually. "And the Arts Council director wants to talk to you about a rotating installation. Also, someone spilled a tray of pastries on the front stairs. I bribed a teenager to mop it up." She took a sip, then tilted her head. "You bribed a teenager, paid him in festival tickets." It felt character-building. She laughed, but her voice was steadier than it had been all week. "I thought I'd be more nervous today," he glanced at her. "Why aren't you?" "Because this time I didn't do it alone." Outside, music floated in from the plaza where the crowd was gathering. The gallery walls had been lined with her newest pieces, bolder, more daring, full of movement and risk. Pieces she wouldn't have painted 6 months ago. She'd named the collection Threshold. Yarden set his drink down and reached into his pocket. "I got you something." She turned, surprised. "You already gave me the studio and the moonstone. This is different." He handed her a small, flat box wrapped in linen. She peeled it open and found an antique brass key mounted on a velvet backing, the kind used for old pianos. "This is from the conservatory in Florence," he said. "Salvaged after they renovated. My assistant tracked it down through some professor who still remembered the boy who almost enrolled." She stared down at it, breath catching. "I thought it should be somewhere you could see it every day," he said. "To remind you that even the things we leave behind still matter." She blinked once, then twice, then leaned forward and kissed him with slow certainty, her hand gripping the front of his shirt. "I don't want to go back to who I was before you," she whispered. "Then don't." Later that afternoon, the speeches began. Dalia stood on the stage outside the gallery beneath a white linen canopy with the ocean wind teasing her curls. She glanced at the audience neighbors, fellow artists, tourists, and a few familiar faces from her weekly classes. Yarden stood near the front, sunglasses on, arms folded, his quiet presence grounding her. "I used to think art was something I had to do alone," she began, her voice carrying clearly. "That struggle was part of the process, but I've learned that being seen, truly seen, doesn't dilute the work. It deepens it." She paused, catching Yarden's eye. "This gallery isn't the end of something, it's the beginning. And I hope you'll keep walking through it with me." Applause rose around her, and as the ribbon was cut and the doors opened, people streamed in, the space coming alive in a way that felt almost sacred. By sunset, every wall hummed with voices and laughter. A young couple debated brushstroke technique in front of one painting while a child spun slowly beneath a mobile installation in the center room. Dalia stood near the back exit, glass of champagne in hand, watching it all unfold. Yarden joined her, sliding an arm around her waist. "Did you see the piece that sold already?" he asked. "The one with the spirals?" "I did. The woman cried when she bought it, said it reminded her of her sister's laugh. That's the power of what you do." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You're going to keep doing that, aren't you?" "What?" "Making me believe in things I'd given up on." He pressed a kiss to the side of her head. "Only if you promise to keep making space for me in your world." "I already did." That night, Back at their shared home, a coastal loft above a surf shop they'd renovated together, Dalia curled up on the couch, legs tucked beneath her as she sorted through a box of old photographs. Yarden sat at the piano he'd had moved in last month, fingers gliding across the keys in a soft, wandering melody. His flute rested on a nearby stand, polished and waiting. She looked up suddenly. "I want to paint our story." He turned slightly on the bench. "What do you mean?" "I want to put it on canvas. Not just the beginning, but all of it, even the mess. Especially the parts that were quiet," he nodded. "Then I'll compose something to go with it." They smiled at each other across the room, two artists no longer hiding from themselves. In the spring, they held a private exhibit called Two. Every painting was paired with an original composition, played through headphones mounted beside each frame. It was unlike anything the town had ever seen. People lined up for hours just to experience it. 3 months later, in an intimate ceremony at the old boathouse he'd transformed into her creative sanctuary, they exchanged vows beneath a canopy of wildflowers. The only guests were a few close friends, the woman from the community center who'd once handed him a bundle of rags, and a golden retriever wearing a floral collar. Yarden wore a linen suit with the sleeves rolled. Dalia walked barefoot down the aisle, carrying nothing but a single moonstone in her palm. "I promise to challenge you," she said, voice steady, "to be honest even when it's hard, and to make space for your music every day." "I promise to build with you," Yarden replied, eyes never leaving hers. "To listen when you need silence, and to stay when everything else feels uncertain." They kissed beneath a sky already turning pink with the promise of evening, and when they stepped out of the boathouse hand in hand, the tide had come in, smoothing the sand behind them like a fresh canvas waiting to be filled. Years later, a small plaque hung beside the front door of the gallery. It read, "Threshold founded by Dalia Everhart and Yarden Grant." Built on art, music, and one impossible summer that changed everything. And inside, if you listened closely, you could still hear the echoes of a flute and the quiet scratch of a paintbrush, two hearts still creating, together.